This video has been developed to have zero spoilers. Whether you have read one Sanderson book or 35, you are safe to watch this video. Hey nerds, what's up? After Brandon Sanderson's insane Kickstarter last year, I feel like more people than ever are starting to get into his works. And on this channel, I do a lot of deep dive Cosmere connections. I'm kind of known for that. So I've been getting a lot of messages, and the messages kind of have this flavor. And these are from people on the internet and even in my real life who are getting into Sanderson. And the messages are all like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know where to start. I know everything is connected, but how? How do you figure this out? And then some of the ones that always make me laugh on my Cosmere Connection videos, people are like, I'm a huge Sanderson fan, I've read all the books, and half of these words are incomprehensible to me. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I had a video for beginners of people to Brandon Sanderson, and not necessarily like telling you the lore or telling you the dumps, but rather giving you a toolkit to understanding how you can discover how Brandon Sanderson's works are all connected for yourself. My goal is to help you, if you want to, be able to figure out all this stuff on your own and understand how I or other people are so good at kind of seeing those connections. So in this beginner's guide, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the Cosmere is. I am going to give you some resources that you can use to discover more yourself. I'm going to give you some quick definitions of words that are used a lot in the fandom that I feel like just don't get defined enough. And I'm also going to give you some tips for how you can be better at spotting connections yourselves within the books. So with that, I'll see you after the jump. So what is the Cosmere? Most of Brandon Sanderson's adult novels are all connected in the same universe, and many people compare it to something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Cosmere is the name used for the entire universe in which the planets of each of his various books reside. Much like our solar system lives within a larger galaxy, each of Sanderson's novels live in their own galaxy that are a part of the same shared universe. So what does this mean practically for when you are reading the books? Well, a couple of things. One, it means that eventually there will be some sort of overarching story for the entire Cosmere. This universe is going to have a story arc. Right now, we have an unofficial sort of Cosmere timeline that can fit all of the books generally in the time we think they're happening within the context of this wider universe story. Although not as important right now, this is predicted to become much more important as Brandon continues the story he is trying to tell. Additionally, although while reading his books, the magic may feel very different and disconnected at first, these magics are actually all connected by some core elements that will be easier to recognize once you practice. Something I think is really important to bring up here is that as a fan who has been a fan for over a decade, the Cosmere is much more in the forefront of people's conversations now than they were just in the general populace. Obviously, hardcore fans were always talking about this, but when I first became a fan, I wasn't what they call Cosmere aware. I was just reading the novels, and it was only once I kind of started getting into it and getting onto the online fandom that I discovered this. So it's really interesting to me how many more fans I noticed are going into Brandon Sanderson's work already aware that they are connected. I say this because it's like you're not behind. If you've read a bunch of his works and you didn't know, that's okay. It's not as big a deal, I think, as a lot of people make it out to be. And honestly, I personally feel like you could enjoy Brandon's individual series even if you didn't care at all about the Cosmere. So it's okay. Take a breath. It's okay if you don't know. You can choose to engage in it if it's fun for you, but you also don't have to if it's not. Okay, let's talk about the question, how do you know so much? How do people recognize so much? And talk about a few resources you can use. The first and most important thing that you may not know is not all the info everybody knows is found in the books. A lot of the knowledge we have about the Cosmere comes from the many different avenues that fans have to communicate with Brandon Sanderson. He is very open with fans. Often, questions get answered through Ask Me Anythings, also known as AMAs, on Reddit, through his YouTube channel, and even at book signings. It's important to note that so far, I'm willing to die on this hill, because it's true so far, that anything you have needed to know for the context of the story has always been within the books themselves. So anything you really need to know for Brandon's wider Cosmere in the story, it's in the books. Now, if you like to theorize and you like to know a lot going in and it's fun to do it, that's the kind of stuff that is found a lot in AMAs. But if you are interested in knowing that stuff and you're like, I don't have time to watch or go or see everything he talks about, there are resources for you. The biggest one of them all is something called the Coppermind. Now, the Coppermind is a fan wiki that is simply excellent and has every possible thing you'd ever need to know about any subject. These wiki pages are infused with knowledge from every possible source. These wikis are run by a group called the 17th Shard. If you recognize that name, yes, the 17th Shard is an in-world Sanderson group, but also the name of wonderful folks who are experts in all things Cosmere. They have a YouTube channel, a Discord, and a podcast outside of the wiki where they answer questions, discuss theories, and everything else Cosmere. If you want to get involved, that is the best resource and the best place to go. A super important warning though, the Coppermind is full of spoilers. Full spoilers. I would be very, very, very careful going around on the Coppermind until you have read most of Sanderson's works. If you're here right now because you've only read a few of Sanderson's books and you want to know more, great. Don't worry so much about all the details. There'll be time to understand the entire Cosmere. That time is after you've read the books. You don't want to get plot spoiled, and you might look something up that you think is super innocuous. I promise you, it's a landmine. I would really recommend not going on to the Coppermind until you're finished your read-throughs. There will be plenty of time to hear all of that information. There are still other ways you can engage in the Cosmere before doing that sort of research. Okay, next let's go over some definitions of words that I think will help you in your Cosmere journey. Some of these are within the books and some of these are just fandom related. The first is the acronym WOB, which stands for Words of Brandon. This refers to all those AMAs I talked about. If someone says something about the Cosmere and says, we learned it in a WOB, or Word of Brandon, it means that we don't know it by something that is written directly in the novels, but rather by an answer to a question at one of his various interviews. Next up is the acronym RAFO, or as the fandom calls it, RAFO. This means read and find out. This is the answer Brandon will give to questions that he can't answer because he feels they are a spoiler for how things will be in upcoming books. It's kind of a badge of honor to get a RAFO, to be honest. Next up is World Hopper. So this is the term for a character that is capable of traveling between worlds, or practically for the reader, is able to travel between series. So for example, if you know a character in the book Warbreaker and then later see them in the Stormlight Archive, that character is considered a world hopper. And I'll go over tips later for easy ways to spot world hoppers on your own. Next up is another in-universe world, investiture. Investiture is just a word I think you hear a lot, and it is a name for the energy that powers all of the magic in the Cosmere. So again, even though the metal magic of Mistborn might feel very different than the Knights of Radiant Magic and Stormlight Archive, both are powered by investiture. To be clear, the word investiture is a word you will not hear, at least so far, in the books very often. It tends to be more of a word we use in the fandom a lot. And the reason for that is that people in his novels wouldn't use the word investiture unless they were Cosmere aware or world hopper, and we don't tend to see a lot of them yet. I think it's going to get more and more. So this is really a term you'll see thrown around in fan spaces as we discuss theories and Brandon's works in general. People like to speculate on investiture a lot because it is fun to think of how the different magic systems are going to interact with each other and have the potential to create future technology. And so that's why it's used, I think, so frequently in the fan discussions. Next up is the word shard, and this one is a little in the weeds, so I need you to stick with me. We know that a power created the Cosmere, and we call that power Adon Elysium. Now, this power at one point was broken and split and fractured into 16 pieces, and we call those pieces shards. These shards, or parts of the power of creation, each have a vessel or a person that is holding that power. And that power generally has a name that corresponds to kind of the intention of that shard. In order not to spoil anything, I'm gonna just completely make up shard names to help you kind of understand the relationship. Let's do Captain Planet. Let's pretend that our powers of creation or our shards are named water, earth, air, fire, and heart. Me, Bookborn, could hold the shard of water, and I would now be known as the vessel to that shard, to that power of creation. Now, the individuals holding these shards are often considered by the inhabitants to kind of be the gods of their individual worlds that they inhabit. So each series, like Mistborn or the Stormlight Archive, are going to have one or more shards on their planet, and the vessels of those shards are kind of considered the gods of that world. And these are things you will definitely hear reference to in the books themselves. Names you might be familiar with in Mistborn would be things like Ruin and Preservation, and in the Stormlight Archive, Honor. Next up is Hoid. Hoid is the name of a world hopper, and he is kind of a fandom favorite. Now, the special thing about Hoid is that he does pop up in every one of Brandon Sanderson's books, and back in the day, this used to be such a fun little hunt. It's a lot easier now. I feel like in general, he's kind of going by his name or making his presence obvious, but back in the day, this was fun. We were always trying to spot him. Now, Hoid has many aliases, and I'm not going to list them here because you gotta trust me, discovering Hoid on your own is fun. I know that's kind of annoying, but if you really wanna be someone who's like, having fun in the Cosmere, which is the point of this video, you're gonna wanna try to find him yourself, and that's kind of a fun journey of discovery. I'll talk about this a little later, but if you want hints on how to find Hoid, look for people who are meddling in the story in unique ways, or perhaps know more than they should, or perhaps are using interesting powers that don't feel like they belong on the current series that you're in. Before I go into the last thing of this section, I want to call out an awesome video that I noticed was published recently by Captured in Words, which was called Origins of the Cosmere. It is so well done and so detailed, and what's really great about that video is it's different than this one, which is trying to give you tools for how to understand the Cosmere on your own. His video really goes into the origins of the Cosmere and will include more discussion on the words I mentioned, like shards and investitures and things of that nature. So I was so excited when I saw that video was published, so close to me publishing this one, because I feel like they are great companion videos. This video more kind of giving you an overview on how to find things yourself, and that video a great place to start if you really want to know how the Cosmere got started and kind of more of the nitty-gritty lore. Okay, before we move on, I want to quickly go over planet names. I think it's very helpful just to kind of have a recognition of the names of planets and which series they go to. I'm specifically going to be talking about the planets in which we have stories that we can read that are set on those planets. We do have names of other planets in solar systems in the galaxy that don't currently have stories on them. I'm not going over those today. We're just gonna go over the list of the ones we're gonna hear the most because stories take place on them. So first we got the Mistborn series, and that takes place on Scadrial. We have the Stormlight Archive, which takes place on Roshar. We have Warbreaker, which takes place on Nalthis. We have Elantris and the novella Emperor's Soul, which both take place on Sel. And we have the White Sand, either the graphic novel or the unpublished novelization that takes place on Taldane. You'll also hear about Threnody, which is from the novella Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell, and First of the Sun, which is the planet from the novella Sixth of the Dusk. Then we have the 3 planets from the Secret Projects, which are admittedly talked about much less in my opinion, but for your information, from Tress of the Emerald Sea, we have Lumar. From the Sunlit Man, we have Canticle, and from Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, we have Komashi. Okay, and finally, I wanted to give you tips on how to catch Cosmere connections yourself while you're reading, so you can join in on the fun with the rest of us. First is world hoppers. One of the biggest and easiest ways to engage with the Cosmere is just spotting world hoppers in different series. In my opinion, one of the easiest signals that someone's a world hopper is to look at their swearing. Yes, the curses they use are often a huge indicator of which people are world hoppers because they will use curses that belong to a different series than the one you're currently reading. So here are some of the worlds and their common swears. So if it's someone from Scadrial or the Mistborn series, they will use language like rusts, rust and ruin, and rusting. Also, you can keep an eye out for mysterious jewelry. If a character is wearing metal or bracers and it's called out, can often be a sign that that is someone from Scadrial. Next, we've got Nalthis or from Warbreaker, and that's just any color talk. Colors is their swear. A hint here, there is a Nalthis world hopper in one of the series, and the hint for them was that they were always using metaphors dealing with color. You might also notice a character if it's called out that they have something like perfect pitch. If we're talking about a world hopper from Roshar or the Stormlight Archive, you'll notice language like storming, storms, or heralds. If it's Elantris or from Sel, they have some swears like merciful Dami, knights, although I don't really remember their swears being used as much to tell that they're from a different planet. I feel like it's more their magic systems. And so to piggyback on that, another obvious tell of a world hopper is just seeing magic that you recognize from another series in the wrong series, right? You see metal magic in the Stormlight Archive or whatever it is. Now, that can sometimes be harder to spot if you're not as well aware of what the different magics look like, but it's a skill that you'll develop over time. And honestly, once you can see it, once you know it's there, it's very easy to tell. Brandon isn't necessarily trying to fool you all the time. There's definitely stuff he is trying to be sneaky about, but a lot of them have easy tells. Honestly, it comes with practice. I've gotten really attuned to recognizing names and people and magic systems just because I've been a fan for so long and been in the fandom spaces. The more you engage with it, the easier it is to notice those things. And if you're enjoying it, the more fun it becomes. But also, you're always gonna miss stuff. I always miss stuff. Everyone always miss stuff. It's when we come together and we can kind of pick all the clues together that makes being a part of the Cosmere honestly so fun. Okay, I hope this was a helpful toolkit for you. I know I didn't dive into the lore. I really wanted this to be more of a video for beginners to get started and discover things on their own. If any of you watching this video would be interested in me doing more of a basics on lore or things that are hard or difficult to find within the books, let me know. It's a video I'd be interested in doing if people wanted it. Let me know today in the comments, let's see, if this was helpful, if you're new to Brandon Sanderson and you're interested in the Cosmere, or if you're new and you're like, could care less. I don't know. Why would you be here? I don't know. Just tell me your thoughts down below. And as always, if you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That's the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I am currently reading or other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.